I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by PrizePicks, powered by GameTime, and now powered by a bunch of Bill Belichick rumors, where obviously it's a Wednesday. We're going to get to all of your Patriots questions that were so kindly put out to us on Twitter. We'll try and get some in the chat as well if we get to it here. But first, let's talk about a couple things. We talked about both of them yesterday, but we're going to start with Belichick, and then we'll finish with some Jerod Mayo stuff that went down in Foxboro today. Nothing crazy, but obviously the Patriots practiced today, so we'll ask for Taylor's updates there. But first and foremost, seems like this Belichick thing is getting realer and realer by the day. We have a new update here basically every single day on the channel. And the latest is from originally Inside Carolina, which was the first. We've talked about them a bunch on here because it was the first people that really broke Belichick's first interview last Thursday. We keep comparing them to our friend Kevin Stone of the New England Football Journal, as sort of a local college beat. They nailed it. Things have since come out. And then today they reported that they are finalizing Belichick to UNC. Now, it's since been held back a little bit more from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, from Adam Schefter of ESPN, or Pete Thamel and Chris Lowe, I believe, of ESPN have it as well, and then Jonathan Jones and CBS. All are basically saying that they're nearing a deal, they're ironing out the details, and that both sides are working towards getting this thing done. So while it's not official, it feels like Bill's going to college, Taylor. What do you make of it? What are your thoughts on this? It's pretty wild that, all of the rumors keep coming out, and it's like, oh, that's crazy. I wonder if it actually happens. Now that it's real, I feel like it's becoming a lot more wilder by the moment.
It's so interesting. The manifesto thing is cool. Yeah. It's just like, what is his offense going to look like? What's his defense going to look like? Like, I know the Patriots borrowed some things from college, like their mint front, where they would sometimes have like Jabril Peppers or Kyle Duggar as a pseudo outside linebacker, and some of those 5-man fronts. That usually helps you protect against RPOs. Like they used it a ton against Joe Burrow a couple of years back. But I'm going to be very interested to see how he changes his coaching philosophy, because I do know that to a degree, at some point, I think he acknowledged that he did need to keep up with the times and with the young players, know how to be able to connect with them and get messaging through to them. And that's part of being a coach. You need to learn how to be the best communicator for different types of people. But if he's going to take the approach he did with like Brady, where you're doing low lights and you're like calling guys out, I know in college, like a lot of kids are on scholarship and there's not a whole lot they can say, which is why coaches like college better, or at least used to before NIL, because they had a lot more power. And then you get to the NFL and people are like, I'm a grown-ass man. Who do you think you're talking to? Like, I make more than you, so you're not about to be doing all that. Obviously different with Bill Belichick, but it's just going to be interesting. Is he going to adapt? Is he going to – and I think those who are close to the Patriots know, or who like really follow them closely, know that Bill is not like actually the evil hoodie. Like he has his own sense of humor. Anybody you ask will be like, no, Bill's low key, like very funny. It goes about it in a different way.
100%.
So it's not like he's some monster or anything, but still the way that he tries to get the best out of players in the NFL may not be the same for college students. So from a scheme perspective, from a philosophical communication perspective, it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts, but I'm sure that UNC is very familiar with his track record, and I'm sure they're not going to bring him in if he's going to be the exact same Bill Belichick. You want the structure, you want the experience, and you want the expertise, but you may not want, again, that negative kind of reinforcement where you're dragging guys a little bit, because that just might not fly, especially with the NIL.
I wrote about this yesterday for SI.com, and it was actually from WEEI when Ross Tucker was on with Andy Hart and Christian Arcand yesterday. And Ross Tucker has turned into an NFL media guy, but he also used to play football, and he played in 2005 with the Patriots. And he basically went on their show yesterday and was like, Belichick will be the worst college head coach, because from what I know about college football and what I know about Bill Belichick, he is negative reinforcement all day long. He's not going to be able to recruit. And now take that with a grain of salt, because Tucker obviously only played one season in New England. And you're right, with guys who really know him, know that he can get to you the right way. It's just different. And it's interesting. The difference between college and the NFL. And I think what's interesting actually with that is what he said yesterday on Pat McAfee, talking about how he would run a college program. And I'm going to read it. I tweeted it yesterday. Basically, he was saying that I'm going to turn it into a pipeline to the NFL for players that will have that ability, will run it like professionals, training, nutrition, scheme, coaching, and techniques, all that will transfer, and it will be geared towards developing players, honing in on time management, discipline, structure, and all of that, developing life skills. And basically said, I have all the contacts in the NFL that I have no doubt that I'll be able to do that. Also felt like a recruiting pitch right through the words of ESPN. But again, I think he has sort of learned and adapted to this new age of players. God, the guy's 72. You have to adapt or die in this business. I think Mac Brown has, he obviously got fired from UNC, but I think he did a pretty good job of that over the last couple of years since leaving Texas and going there. I mean, Drake Maye talks the world about Mac Brown. And now, granted, he helped him become the number 3 overall pick and one of the best young quarterbacks in football, but that's beside the point. But yeah, interesting stuff on Bill. Maybe news breaks within the hour while we're on here that it's official. But as of now, talks between Bill Belichick still ongoing with UNC, but it looks like they're trying to get it across the finish line. All right, that's the Bill Belichick update, Taylor. Now let's talk about what's going on. Patriots post-bye week. It's Wednesday. They're back at practice today. You were down there. I was not. 2 questions for you. One, any updates just in general practice attendance that you can relay, anything of note? And secondly, the report that we talked about yesterday on the show where Jerod Mayo's job could be in jeopardy if these last 4 games don't go according to plan, they get blown out, etc., loses the locker room. That was from Greg Bedard yesterday. We talked about it on the show. Any updates there? Anyone relay any information or just any thoughts in general, questions asked about Mayo and his job security moving forward?
So with attendance, Marcus Jones once again was not there. We actually saw a few guys in the locker room with masks. We saw Kyle Duggar, he was at practice. Devon Gottschalk, he was at practice. But Marcus Jones has had that mask on, I think, for at least a couple of days. He missed a couple of practices, so he could be dealing with some kind of illness. I believe we'll actually get an injury. We're going to get an injury report today, so we'll get a little bit more information on what may be going on there. Javon Baker, whose locker actually moved from the corner where you first walk in. He used to be with all the running backs, like Kevin Harris, Jermichael Hasty, Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, and then awkwardly like Javon Baker. It's, they only have so many spaces in the locker room, and sometimes you just need to accommodate based on where guys have been, what spots you have available, because I saw some pushback on, like, why is he not with the receivers? Like, Polk was with the tight ends and offensive linemen earlier, so you kind of do your best with what you've got. But now Javon Baker is between Jacoby Brissett and Demario Douglas. Now all of the receivers are finally together, but he was not at practice, Javon Baker, in, a stretch where we were expecting to see more of the young guys. You'd like to see him out on the field, so that was a little disappointing. But besides the attendance, go to Jerod Mayo. The big thing really, I still don't get the vibe that players are going against Jerod Mayo. Like, we haven't gotten any hint of that. And I think if you really need to be worried, it's when things start to kind of leak out. And you get the kind of off comment every once in a while where it's like, that's not the status quo. Like,
Hunter, like what made you say that when your head kind of peaks up a little bit? Like, okay.
Exactly. And Hunter Henry was talking about how he appreciates the consistency, the messaging from Jerod Mayo that's been the same really throughout, where it's you got to learn from your losses and you got to find ways to win. Might sound obvious, but I'm sure that consistency allows them to at least have a message and a vision for what they need to achieve and something to always have in the back of their minds during games, outside of games, what have you. I asked also Kendrick Bourne. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Christian Gonzalez. I tried to ask Kendrick Bourne. I couldn't get one in. But I asked Hunter Henry. Oh my God, I'm getting names mixed up. I asked Christian Gonzalez. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm flustered. I literally I asked Christian Gonzalez, all head coaches have different edges that they bring, something that makes them unique. What is that for Jerod Mayo, especially in the context of, it's been a tough season. You're trying to retain buy-in. He mentioned the playing background, which is what KJ Osborne mentioned, what Austin Cooper mentioned. Basically, what a lot of players said over the summer who were new was they were really intrigued by Jerod Mayo, the perspective he brings. And Gonzo was saying, if Jerod Mayo is telling you something, he probably knows what he's talking about, and he does a good job of preparing those guys. So the locker room, there was not a single whiff of Jerod Mayo being on any kind of hot seat. But at the same time, the report did say it would have to be a disastrous end of the season. And, like we said, if you get blown out week after week after week, then, you're probably staring a potential scalding hot seat in the face. But I do not think we're even close to getting there. I think guys are ready to reset, ready to finish strong. And Drake Maye mentioned how guys, there's a sense of urgency in the locker room because, guys, I love this quote. He said, we never want to have this season again.
Right.
And I'm sure fans feel the exact same way. So they understand the circumstances. I think a lot of these guys also understand the need for professionalism and really locking in, like finding your why or whatever it is to close out this season. And just try to finish strong. And, whether it's because they're leaving, this wasn't something that was said, but like whether you're a free agent, you just want to put good tape out there.
Right.
Like teams are going to look at the last 4 months. And if you clocked out, they may not want you as badly if you're, on the open market. And if you're returning, you want to have something that you can hold up and be like, hey, next year, if we fix these things, maybe we got a little something going on. So yeah, it was just a refreshed locker room and, the press conferences, I would say.
Any other good quotes from Drake? I didn't get to listen in.
Not a ton really. He got a bunch of questions about Belichick and UNC, and he was like, yeah that'd be really cool. Nothing really too crazy there. He said it was very interesting. I'm trying to think. He mentioned,
if you don't have it, no worries. I didn't get to listen in. So
I'm like literally scanning through my brain. Like ball security is something he said he wanted to emphasize and not throwing into bad windows, because Hunter brought up how there was a sack he took that led to a field goal that he was really impressed by, where Drake didn't throw into traffic. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and on the Mayo front, before we move on to questions here, I know you sort of mentioned like the losing the locker room thing and how right now everything seems fine, but like a lot can happen honestly over 4 weeks, and it made me think when you said that to like the Matt Eberflus situation in Chicago. Now I'm not comparing it to that, but they went into this season, revamped their roster, drafted Caleb number 1 overall, and basically gave Matt Eberflus another chance. And I think at the beginning, you would at least assume that was because the locker room was relatively bought in on the guy and they would kind of get a feel of the players. And very quickly this season, they were like 4-2. They were in the playoff hunt. And then all of a sudden, they tanked. They lose 6 straight. And by the time the end of that Thanksgiving game boils over, Jalen Johnson is reaming out Matt Eberflus in the locker room. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I'm saying like there is a possibility if it gets super ugly over these next 4 weeks that it could happen. Again, not saying it will, but that's kind of how quickly that stuff can happen in the league. So obviously his job, not necessarily super safe given the season, but I think if things go status quo from here, he will be okay. Obviously, see what happens over these next 4 weeks. All right, let's dive into these mailbag questions. But you know what? Before we do, let's listen to our friends over at PrizePicks. We're going to do PrizePicks because PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. They made daily fantasy sports accessible to all with PrizePicks. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players, and you will have a shot at winning up to 200 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can make the holiday season bigger and brighter with PrizePicks. Again, the best place to get in that real money sports action. They offer MasterCard now as well as Venmo transactions for quick and easy deposits into your account all sports season. Withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. And they're also giving away 2 free picks in December and giving away $30+ million in rewards during what they are calling Pickmas over at PrizePicks. You sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So head over there today, download the app, use code CLNS, you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, PrizePicks. Now let's get into our questions. Let's start here. This is from, I like this guy's name, Curmudgeon Mike. You would think it's my burner. Yeah, right. I guess this is sort of what we just said, but I guess we can kind of dive a little deeper if we want. What do we think the final games need to look like for him to save his job heading into the offseason?
I think you need to be in it until the end against the Cardinals and the Chargers. I think the Cardinals are a very inconsistent team. As talented as they are, they're very boom or bust. I think to a bit on both sides of the ball. Like Kyler Murray's made some outstanding plays, especially outside of structure. He's also put the ball in harm's way more than most quarterbacks over their last few games. Then you look at the defense. Budda Baker is kind of the shining example of this, where he's the kind of guy who's going to make some plays, and obviously he had like 18 tackles last week. I don't even know how that's possible, especially for a safety. But at the same time, he also misses a bunch of tackles, and the Cardinals are like one of the teams that's given up, I think, the most missed tackles. But they also have like had some of the most stops. So it's very kind of back and forth there. So the Cardinals, I think, is a game you can win. I think the Chargers, especially with such a very shallow receiving core, with the Patriots secondary, I think that's another game they should be until the end. The Bills, look, if you get blown out in Buffalo,
I'm with
worse
you.
things can happen. Like that is, it's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, an MVP candidate, a defense that's extremely well coached and plays its heart out. And you just saw what happened against the Rams, where they're down, they come, swooping back and almost end up pulling it out towards the end if it weren't for one poor coaching decision. So that at Buffalo game is the one where I'm just like, hey man, just like don't beat yourself is the biggest thing. If it's penalties and it's just like you have a complete brain fart, then that's a bad look. But at least one of those Buffalo games, I think you need to be competitive, whether Josh Allen's playing in the last game of the season or not. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like you got to be competitive in these games, but the one pass I'll kind of give would be, that one game at Buffalo.
I'm totally with you. And even yesterday, like we talked about this, and you had mentioned, I mentioned going 0-4, but keeping competitive, it would be okay. And even you pushed back and you were like, they need to win at least one of these. And I still don't know if they do. I do think they just need to play each one relatively competitive throughout the end. And I think, like you mentioned, I'm kind of just regurgitating what you said a little bit, but playing Arizona, playing LA is a reasonable expectation. Right now, Buffalo is its own thing. The game out there, it's not week 18 yet. Allen's likely going to play, so that's what it is. But I do think that week 18 game is actually pretty important because even if they are playing starters, they're looking ahead to the postseason. You're at home. This is your last tape to put on for the 2024 season, right? I think even if starters are in that game, you're at home and you need to play relatively competitive football in the game. Now, if it turns into a 14-point loss at the end or something, but you need to play sound. Like you mentioned, the penalties can't happen. One of the two Buffalo games, actually, no, the last Buffalo game at home has to be competitive. And then the other two, you got to keep it close. I think Jerod will be okay. If this just turns into, like we mentioned, this nightmare scenario where, you come off the bye and the discipline gets worse and players aren't, giving their all, and Mayo, again, loses this locker room for whatever reason, coaching decisions, then you're talking about a potential one and done. But I think play it safe, play it competitive, and he'll be just fine.
And especially like the red zone stuff, that's the biggest thing on both sides of the ball. Like if Marvin Harrison Jr. catches a contested pass against Christian Gonzalez and scores, like, yeah, okay, I'm fine with competitive reps. But the wide open stuff that we've been seeing where it's not even, there's no one in the area code and the offense like shooting itself in the foot again with the penalties, like those are the biggest things. Where the other stuff that's going on, you want to make those improvements, but the red zone execution is probably like the banner thing that you gotta just it's got to look better than what it has in the past.
Totally. Tayler, you actually asked this question last week on Twitter to followers. So I wanted to see the feedback you got, and I wanted to get your answer too. Came in the mailbag. What has Jerod Mayo done well this year? Like, what is the affirmative case for his return? Besides, it's just year one, because you kind of asked it and we talked about it. Like, what is the draw aside from players, coach, and guys still haven't bought out just yet?
So one thing I'd say is we've seen the team bounce back after their worst games. I don't think that's nothing. There were multiple times this year where things could have spiraled. And obviously, like, yes, they lose to the Dolphins. They also lose to the Colts. But that was a very competitive game still. That came down to a 2-point conversion, or the Colts, a playoff team, were like, you know what, we just want to kind of put this away and not really give them a chance to come back in this one. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that they haven't really spiraled at any point this season. When things get bad, they have a much more competitive effort the next week. And 2 out of the 3 times that happened, they won. I would also say I think that he does prepare them well. Like in terms of letting them know, like the keys to the game that Belichick always talked about, like this is what we have to do. Week in and week out, Mayo says it, players say it. They're like, we knew what we had to do and we didn't do it. Now that's its own problem, of course. But I think as a head coach, that needs to be like one of the bare minimums, is you need to give the answers to the test. I think he does that pretty well, especially the guy was a linebacker. It's not like he doesn't know how to study tape, find tendencies, look for weaknesses. He's not Bill Belichick, but, he's still a cerebral guy who understands the game very well. I would say those are the 2 big things. And also, like, retaining the buy-in. I know that seems like nothing, but that's not nothing. This is a losing season. Yes, they have young players. And yes, this is a rebuild where a lot of guys knew what they were in for. But that doesn't always matter. Sometimes if you start losing and things aren't looking great, it's very easy for people to start pointing fingers. The locker room starts to divide. That has not happened. They have been consistent in their messaging. You had little things throughout the season where the receivers were upset or whatever, but like that's not the kind of thing where I was like, oh no, the team is falling apart. Like, yes,
happening in Philly right now. AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts apparently hate each other, and they're still 11-2 and going to go to the Super Bowl. So like,
and you have a veteran who's going out on interviews and being like, yeah, it's bad, in reporting things that no one even knew about. So yeah, I do think there are some positives, and those are the things that excite me. I think the thing he really needs to improve, handling the media, which I thought he did a much better job today. No crazy quotes. I barely understood I barely remembered what he said when I was just trying to pull stuff back.
That's what he wants.
Coach, that's a very good thing. That, and then I think the in-game situational execution. Those are the two really big adjustments I'd like to see him make. But yeah, I do like what we've seen so far, but also, like I mentioned yesterday, I'd like to see more aggression, better situational execution. And again, the media stuff, just like don't make any more headlines. If we can get that done, more aggression, better decisions in those critical moments, and then no unnecessary headlines, I think that you're looking good, Jerod Mayo, heading into year 2 with some time to reflect on what you could have done better.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think he does obviously bring the players. He says he's not a players coach, and I tend to agree with him, but he knows how to get the most out of players by being a former player. And I think that's the line he wants to sort of, the fence he wants to kind of stand on, right? Is being hard on these guys, getting the most out of them, but also understanding what these guys go through on a day-to-day basis. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that. Now, you mentioned the in-game stuff, decision-making. I also just think the in-game, like actual coaching too, where he should be able to give a helping hand to DeMarcus Covington. It feels like he hasn't wanted to do that yet because
he mentioned that today. He said that even if it doesn't look like he's talking to everybody else, he has the headset. Right. So they're in constant communication. That's just one thing where when you look at it from the broadcast, he's just standing in one place most of the time. And it's just like, what is going on? But he did say that even when you don't realize, he's still talking to those guys.
Yeah, and you hope that's the case, and all you can do is believe him, and I do until he proves us wrong on that front. But there are sometimes, like, I always think of Jim Caldwell with the Colts, where it looked like that guy just stood there and let Peyton Manning run the entire show. Now, granted, I think they won a Super Bowl, or they won a Super Bowl with Caldwell, or they went to one and lost. But no, they went to one and lost in 2009. But he was, they were still good on that team, and but yeah, it does sometimes give off that vibe that he doesn't really. He's not really coaching in game, but obviously he went against that today. But yeah, that, and then the players coach aspect I think is important. I think that can help guys come in and potentially attract free agents. So just build on that. And again, to the question, I do think it just being year 1 on a team that was pretty decimated does give him the right, I guess, to return next year, barring a complete collapse.
And even Dietrich Wise talked about how, like, with the miscommunications and the issues on defense, he mentioned it today. John Jones mentioned it, I believe, on Monday, that there are a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys that have been in the mix, and that does play an effect. Now, it's more disappointing when you're talking about a guy like Kyle Duggar being the one who's making those like really critical mistakes. And obviously early in the season, it was Jelani Tavai. But you also, you have Christian Ellis, you have Del Pettis, you have Jalen Hawkins, you had like Jaquaylin Roy, Eric Johnson. There's so even Yannick Ngakoue, not necessarily inexperienced, but a guy who's still new to your system. Right. There are a lot of new pieces, rotating pieces, Barmore coming back and trying to get his legs under him. So that's another aspect of it. Like when people say it's the same defense, or they want to compare the two, it's like, it's not apples to apples. It's very much apples to oranges. And it's like, not to be condescending, but it's like, if you really think about it and think, okay, why aren't they better? Like, look at the roster, look at the guys who were playmakers last year, and look where those impact players are now. And I think that answers a lot of the questions about why they took such a big step back.
And that's why I'm transitioning us to this question here from @ThatGuyStinks on Twitter. Love the handle, by the way. Why do you think the defense has played so bad with DeMarcus Covington, who was so highly spoken about in coaching circles last season?
It's really tough when you don't really know what exactly a defensive coordinator for a team is doing in that exact week, right? Because the biggest thing they do is just prepare you. Like, they let you know what you can expect. And then a lot of the other stuff is position coaches, like the really specific, minute things, because you have to break these things up. One person can't do everything. The DC has so many other things to think about. I would say, obviously, the talent is one thing. I think the Belichick effect and not having him, like just the little nuggets he can give you that go such a long way and can kind of just simplify things in a way that even coaches will talk about, like, who have very successful careers. I think it was Matt Rule last year mentioned how he had a conversation with Bill and it kind of felt like, oh my God, these were things that I had never really thought of in the way he told me them. And it really opened my mind to things. I think that's a really big factor. So talent, not having the Bill Belichick advantage. And I don't want to sound like a scapegoat and I'm trying to, get to Marcus Covington. out of the weeds, because I think if there has to be a scapegoat and someone needs to get fired and the Krabs are like, I want blood. Like, who is going to pay for this bad season? It might maybe unfairly have to be Covington. But I really would like to know, I wish I could give a player true serum and be like, what is he not doing well enough? Maybe like the coaching of the fundamentals, maybe not focusing on certain things quite enough. That could obviously be a part of it. But it also feels like the issues are so inconsistent, where it's rarely like one thing for more than a few weeks. And if it is one thing in a few weeks, usually it gets corrected. Like we talked about tackling for a while. That got better. Containing mobile quarterbacks. That got better. Third down defense got better. We don't really talk about those things because it's always just like shit on DeMarcus Covington time. But there's not a lot of issues you could talk about that were issues earlier in the season that have persisted. The run defense hasn't been great, but you also look at who they played. Like we talked about it. Tank Bigsby, Tony Pollard, Jonathan Taylor. Like these are guys with very good vision that are very
Joe
powerful.
Mixon went off on them too.
Joe Mixon. And that was like really bad coverage bust. Yeah. Like that's giving up explosive plays, but they've really cut down on the explosive carries. And we haven't quite had a game like Tank Bigsby had where they could not stop him to save their life. Right. So I do want to give him credit for that. They have made a lot of adjustments, but I think the lack of talent, not having Belichick, those are probably the two biggest things, because you don't get that extra winning edge that you need sometimes when you have a depleted roster and you're like, all right, next man up. That sounds great, but it sounds even better when you got Bill Belichick and he can, just really make things crystal clear for these young guys.
Let's stay on the Belichick topic. There's a tweet from a UNC offensive lineman who tweeted like within an hour ago, I have decided to take my name out of the transfer portal, #GoHeels. Like that has Bill written all over it. I think that's so funny. So you mentioned the Belichick. I love this story now. It gets funner by the hour. And you mentioned the Belichick effect of
it's Katzen. Oh my God, this is one of my boys, Alex Katzen.
Oh, hi, Alex Katzen. Well, this tweet, this Belichick story, I love it. And you mentioned this Belichick effect, the breadth of knowledge he has in his head about football. This 400-page Bible that he gives them, like he knows everything about the game. And I like how you said the Matt Rule thing too. So I know college, NFL, different. Frankly, neither of us are as well versed in college football as we are in the pros. But do you think he can do this? Like, do you think he's going to go there and he's going to elevate the program and he'll probably help them get a couple more athletes? But do you think it's actually going to work? What are your thoughts on that?
I think having Nick Saban as a resource and a best friend is massive, because Saban obviously was NIL part of the reason he retired.
Yeah, I think so. He wasn't a fan of the whole the new landscape.
And they've clearly talked about this, right? And we know Nick Saban did not do well in college because he didn't do well in the NFL because he liked the college environment better, where you have more control and you can tell people what to do and they can't really bark back. So he at least can tell Bill Belichick, all right, this is the kind of stuff that works, because they have very similar coaching styles. You look at Nick Saban coaching at Bama, and it's just like college Bill Belichick, where he is getting after these guys. He's not letting any detail or attention to that lack. So I think that maybe he can let Belichick know, all right, you got to curve some things, but yeah, you still got to lean into these guys because they do need discipline. But like what Belichick and Saban bring, that attention to detail, being able to communicate things in a way that very few coaches on the planet in any sport can do so, I absolutely think he'll be successful. Now, it's only going to be 2 years. I like to give him a year of some, potential growing pains, because so many people say that college football and NFL football are two different sports. Got the wider hashes. Philosophy is a little bit different. You can't rely on the quarterback quite as much. There's more sideline communication. There's so many different aspects to it. Yeah. So I hope he surrounds himself with people who have experience in college and can make that easier on him. But I think if he has that 1,000-foot view and just being more of someone who just relays messages, I think that can be fine, because he's watching college. I think it's going to be a lot easier for him to kind of see. I won't say easier, because a lot of the things that get to the NFL trickle up from high school, then college, then they get to the league. So it's not going to be the same kind of thing. But at some point, there's only so much you can innovate in football, and Bill Belichick has seen just about everything. So
I know.
I think he can be successful in college, but I also would like to acknowledge, like you said, we are ignorant when it comes to the college game.
Right.
There could be aspects of this that I'm not even considering, but it's Bill Belichick. He's just, I think, a great coach, period, who even coaches respect and hold in high regard as a teacher. So I would be shocked if he's unsuccessful. I'll say that.
A couple layers that I kind of have sort of been peeling back on this over the last couple of days. The first one is the idea that he's we're not going to be able to talk about him anymore. It's almost like, oh, we want him to stay in the pros because we want him to stay relevant. Like, I think he's going to be appointment TV at UNC.
Yeah.
Like,
It's just like Dion.
that's where I was going. Yeah. People love Dion at Colorado. They love Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders now because he brought a different element to that. Now, he's not going to be as open and, I guess, entertaining as Dion is at Colorado, but he still made Colorado Buffaloes, the like worst college football program the year before they hired him, into in 2 seasons a ranked program, and they were just outside of the college football playoff. So the ability to turn around a program with a high profile coach, it can happen. It just did for the last 2 seasons in Boulder. And I think people, like I said, it's going to be appointment TV. People are going to watch. They're going to want to see how that team plays, at least early on. Even down the stretch last year, like my brother became obsessed with the Colorado Buffaloes, and he used to come over and watch like when they first started winning those first couple games last year, and he was like, "Oh, I love this team. They're so fun." We would watch the games together, and then by the end of the year, he'd still be texting me like, "You want to watch the Colorado game?" I'm like, "No, they're 4-8," but like people still cared, right? And so I think that's going to happen with Bill. And the other thing on that is with the new playoff, the ACC isn't that challenging to win. Like Clemson won the ACC in the ACC championship this year, and they were ranked like 20th through like they were basically unranked for some of the season because they went so up and down. They made a run. They get into the playoff, or they get into the ACC championship rather because Miami like if he just gets in and wins the ACC, gets in the playoff, anything can happen in a 1-game one-off against Bill Belichick. You think Bill Belichick isn't going to have you prepared to play Ohio State or Tennessee in a 1 game, and then you can just move on from there. So if he makes the playoff, I think that's a good, successful season. So I do think that'll happen with him in Chapel Hill. So we'll see where it goes. But it's going to be fun to pay attention to. All right, Taylor, we're going to get back to some questions in a couple minutes. But first, let's hear from our friends at GameTime, because GameTime is the #1 ticketing app in the world right now. And they are partnered with us here at CLNS Media. They have the GameTime Picks feature that makes ticketing that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. The GameTime Picks feature filters out the fluff to give you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They also have the all-in pricing feature that I always have toggled on because you never want to get with those hidden fees at checkout. It just tells you exactly what you're going to have to pay right up front without the fees, without the taxes, so you don't get hit at the end. Right now, if you want to go to Chargers at Patriots in a couple weeks, you can head to Foxboro for as little as $34 right now on the GameTime app. And if you're out in Arizona, if you're a West Coast fan and you're going to see the Pats play at State Farm Stadium, you can get in for $31. That's the low right now on GameTime. They have the lowest price guarantee as well, and if it's not, then they will credit you up to 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime today. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS. You get $20 off your first purchase with code CLNS. Terms apply. Again, head to GameTime, create an account, and redeem code CLNS. You get $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it, Taylor?
Game time.
Good answer. It's game time. It's also time to finish the rest of this mailbag. So we are going to go to J.R. Hawk talking about free agency. What is the realistic plan B if T. Higgins actually stays in Cincy with upcoming free agent or which free agent offensive lineman, should the Patriots prioritize? One little wrinkle to this is after Monday's game, Monday night's game, it was Bengals and Cowboys, and Joe Burrow was asked after the game about T. Higgins potentially leaving, and he said, I have a feeling we're going to figure this thing out. And Kelsey Conway, who is a very respected Bengals reporter, tweeted after the game, I've been covering Joe Burrow for years. He doesn't say anything that isn't calculated. I think he knows something. They're going to get this thing done. And then Jeremy Fowler from ESPN reported today that T. Higgins may be switching agents. So something tells me they're going to get done with him in Cincinnati. So let's move on to plan B. Taylor, what do you think it should be? And also if you want to hit on some free agents at the offensive line position as well.
I mean, I think the plan B really has to be Tet if you don't get Darius Slayton. Now, obviously, you can try to go for a trade. There's been some rumblings about A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts we mentioned earlier. Now, I do know that players have been saying that it was kind of getting blown up a little more than what it was and that it'll make them better or whatever. But you always keep your ear to the ground with these kinds of things. A.J. Brown's been traded from a team once. Different situation, but it could happen again. You never know with these things. I would like trade for DK, one of those guys. Like if you're going to trade, I want it to be for those like true alpha X types who can completely take over a game. That doesn't feel totally realistic right now. Then when you look at free agency, there's just not a lot of great options. And that's kind of how free agency works. We talked about it last year. Kind of feels like it's starting to shape up similarly this year, although there are some players I think that will hit the market at value every year. You got like 5 difference makers really on the market. But if you look at the wide receiver position outside of T. Higgins, you're talking about Stephon Diggs, who's probably going to go back to the Texans. He had a season-ending injury, but had a lot of chemistry with C.J. Stroud early on. Keenan Allen, don't really have any interest in him, period, but I don't see why he wouldn't go back to the Bears when they have better coaching around him. Amari Cooper loves being a Buffalo Bill. Chris Godwin's coming off a major injury. I've been saying Darius Slayton because I think he's one of the few guys that has some real juice, has lived at X in his career, and can bring some verticality to the offense that they've been lacking. Demarcus Robinson's been a decent X for the Rams, and like I was saying last time we had this discussion, if you're good enough for Matthew Stafford and the Rams, I think you're good enough for the Patriots. They have obviously 2 superstars, but, at least it's a veteran presence because right now you don't really have a true X, even though Kayshon Boutte's been in the role. So, again, you need a difference maker at receiver, period. You cannot go into next year with the same room that you have right now and maybe just like a couple of mid-tier veterans added to the mix. So I think that's your alternative. Whether it's him, Mika Buka, like whoever it is, Luther Burden, like you need one of those true difference makers who is going to be a starter from day one and be able to contribute right out of the box. So, I hope that T hits the market. It's really going to suck if he doesn't because this market is dry at receiver this offseason when you look at the realistic guys to hit the market. But, I think it's probably just going to be the draft is your best case scenario.
You mentioned Tet. You mentioned Luther Burden. You mentioned Ibuka. You didn't mention Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter in the latest ESPN mock draft with Field Yates this morning goes to the Patriots at pick number 3. Obviously, Heisman favorite. Unbelievable wide receiver, unbelievable cornerback, plays both sides, did everything for Colorado this season. Question comes from G. McJenkins. If we do take Travis Hunter, how would you expect the Patriots to use him? Are you worried about him being too skinny to handle the rigors of one side of the ball, let alone 2? I know this has been your knock on Travis Hunter, so talk to me about Hunter. I also saw today that you tweeted that you're kind of warming up to the idea of them drafting him.
Yeah, and James White was on board. You retweeted it. That was pretty
good.
Cool. But yeah, so I looked at scouting reports because that's been my concern, but I haven't really heard about that from, scouts or anything. So I wanted to just quick Google search. Let me read 3 scouting reports about Travis Hunter and see if I'm alone in that fear, if he has the potential to gain some mass. Now, friend of the show, Andre Weingarten, who used to be an NFL scout, did mention that Travis Hunter's legs are pretty skinny and they don't look like they could put on much more mass, but he did say they're very toned, which obviously it's more muscle there. So maybe that'll help, but really none of the scouting reports I read said anything about durability concerns. Obviously you got to figure out where you're going to play him. I think most people assume he's going to be a corner in the NFL because I think if you are concerned about his size, corner, you're not nearly as concerned as you are if he's a wide receiver. You're not going to be taking as many hits. If anything, you're delivering the hits. And he does play with an aggressive style at corner. Like he doesn't play like he's 180, 185 or whatever. He gets after it. Also, like that forced fumble he had in that one game on the goal line was awesome. But I mean, he's such a playmaker, dude. He's an athlete in terms of like what he can do on a football field. Maybe I think he's going to run like a low 4.4. I don't know if he's a 4.3 kind of guy, but he is an incredible football player and the kind of guy that you want on your team. If the durability is not a concern and the Patriots aren't worried about it and they say, hey, we're going to get you in here, put another 10, 15 pounds on you, kind of like what we know with Demario Douglas, he put on a lot of weight before he got to the team. If you can do that, you're talking about Christian Gonzalez and Travis Hunter, 2 guys who you can have. You won't be paying both at the same time until about 2029, maybe 2028 if you sign him to an extension early, Travis Hunter. And those are 2 guys who are going to be under 25 and potential all-pro/Pro Bowl players every single year. I'm all about building up the trenches. Like, that's where I like them to invest a lot of their money. Like Mason Graham, if you can get him, shit. Like, yes, please. Right. But at the same time, man, it'd be really hard to pass up what would be truly a lockdown cornerback duo. So that's why I'm saying I'm warming up. And then on offense, like he's not like Marcus Jones where he didn't really play receiver in college. He was more of a gadget guy. Travis Hunter, is he going to be running like whip routes and all that stuff? No, but he can run a hitch, a go, and a slant. Those are 3 of the most important routes in football. If you can do that at a high level, I'm all about it. So I think he could be more than a Marcus Jones where it's not just like a few gadget appearances. It's like, no, he'll line up outside and he'll actually run, and you need to respect him. So maybe like 5 of those plays a game or something like that, because If you think about like Marcus Jones, he's a punt returner. So that's another like 5-6+ reps that he has, plus now the offensive stuff. So if you can maybe take the role that Marcus Jones has or that kind of snap share and translate into a package for Travis Hunter in the red zone, critical situations, what have you.
You're getting me excited.
I really am trying to think about it and be fair.
No, I know.
I think it'd be crazy to only have him play on one side of the ball, especially if you do have him play corner, because you're running a lot. But if you're a good athlete, you should be okay. It's more like the
and he clearly has the stamina to play a ton of football like he has the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Right. And like, do I want him doing that after his rookie deal? Maybe not. Like, I'm not saying it's necessarily sustainable for an entire career. An NFL season is much different. It's longer. You have training camp. Like, an NFL season from training camp going all the way to if you make the playoffs, especially, is like 2 college football seasons. Like, you cannot survive. I don't care who you are. You're not surviving playing both sides of the ball consistently. But if it's like, in certain game plans, again, packages I'm cool with. But yeah, I'm definitely warming up on Travis Hunter. And like, anytime we bring it up, I feel so bad bringing up the durability because I love everything else.
I know.
So yeah, I'm definitely more okay with
the idea. Yeah, the idea of him being more like a rotational receiver plus kind of thing, like not just Marcus Jones, but like I look at how much Drake Maye loves his tight end. So get another tight end to develop behind, and obviously you have Jaheim Bell, but behind Hunter and Hooper, and run a ton of 12. And then when you do run 11, he can be like your third wide receiver. And I know he can play on the outside, but I'm saying like when you go 3 wide receiver, you can have him go out there as well and kind of be like your third gadget rotational piece there, where it's more than just Marcus Jones 2 plays a game, but it's like you said, a red zone package. It's okay. It's 3rd down and we freaking need another weapon out here. I don't care. Everyone can know we're going to go to Travis. And if you cover the shit out of him, then it's just going to open up somebody else. And here we go. So his ability, it's exciting. And I think that if they play it right, which again, you can only hope that the front office and the coaching staff can, I think it's very intriguing. So if they do land the 3rd pick and QBs go 1 and 2, we'll certainly see what happens. But man, is he an exciting player to watch. Just won the, what's the award? I just wrote about it today. He won the Paul Hornung, basically the Freak of the Year award. It's the most versatile player in college football award, where Marcus Jones won that? Yeah, he did. Marcus Jones won it a couple years ago. Jack Coletto, who was like a fullback / linebacker for Oregon State, I think, won it last year. But other guys like McCaffrey, Jabril Peppers won it when he was with Michigan. So like it's that versatile guy, and he's a freak. He basically won the Freak Award. So all right, now back to the draft, and I like this question. Can you see the Patriots being aggressive and trading back into the first like the Texans did when they got Stroud and CJ Anderson at 2 and 3? Now, the Texans, when they did this, they had pick 2 and then they had pick like 12. So they were able to use 12 and change to get up to 3. So it'll be tough for the Patriots to be that aggressive because they just don't have the capital. But if they do trade out of 3 to 5 or 6, if someone wants a quarterback or something, then you have capital to get back into like the middle or back half of the first round, and you can double dip in a situation like this. Now, you can also use that capital to develop a bunch of other players, but I do see them potentially, if they like another guy. Last year, they wanted to get into the back end and got burned and weren't able to go that receiver. So now, you know what? Yeah, right. Now, whether they extend themselves even further and offer more, now they'll have the capital to do that, or you find a different team that will actually make a trade with you and go from there. So I do definitely think it's possible. I don't know if it's 2 front half of the first round guys, but they could definitely go do this. Yeah,
if they love the guy, I'm about it. Like, the first round is where you're getting potential instant starters. Now, obviously, they tried to go and get Tyler Guyton, I think it was reported. Tyler Guyton, Xavier Legette, and Keon Coleman were the names that we heard about that they were trying to get back into the first round for. I'm cool with it. If you have extra capital to spend, like, you can get more draft picks, you can figure that kind of stuff out. But if you have extra first rounders to deal, hell yeah, man, if you really like a player, because you're on Drake Maye's rookie deal. You want to maximize this window as best as possible once, especially with young contracts. So yeah, I don't, there's only so much I can say because I don't really know the prospects. It's not like I can say, yeah, go in and get that guy, but absolutely, if they have the extra picks to use, I would be very down for that idea.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a couple quarterback questions before we get out of here. The first one, I wanted to ask it. I don't like the idea, but it's interesting. What are your thoughts on sitting Drake Maye down the stretch here? Giving Joe Milton a look and increasing his trade value.
No, that's what preseason's for. No, that's all I got. No.
I agree.
Would make no sense. You are trying to convince teams that they need to come here. If you put in Joe Milton, you look so unserious. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This isn't like a veteran with a major health concern. Like we're talking about a rookie who you already didn't play until after the first month. Like
Drake Maye protection already happened.
Right. Yeah. No. Respectfully, absolutely not.
I'm with you. You can't do it. There's no question that he needs. Not that he needs the reps, but it's good for him to see more NFL football heading into next season. They've relatively cleaned up the offensive line enough to where it's not a complete nightmare for him being back there, right? And so that was the only concern. I don't think you can't protect him and save him from getting injured at this point in the season. And we talked about tanking or lack thereof on yesterday's show. If they do this, that's tanking. That looks so bad. That's how you lose the locker room, is sitting Drake Maye here down the stretch. Joe Milton may be great, but like you said, I like how you said it that way. That's what the preseason's for. Jacoby Brissett, when he was first here, he was able to be traded, because of his preseason tape, but he also got in for those couple games when Jimmy went down as well. Mm-hmm. But guys can up their trade value in preseason. I think that's what they, that's Joe Milton's season.
I don't even know how much of a rush you are necessarily to get rid of Joe Milton.
I know.
He's got the arm. He's got the athleticism where if he had to step in, he's not Drake Maye, but he could probably replicate a lot of what Drake Maye does. And even if you bring in a veteran, unless you really like the guy, if someone wants to offer you like a third round pick or even like a fourth or something like that for Joe Milton next year,
yeah,
you have to think about it. Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily be in a rush to get rid of the guy. If he's growing in your system, he's talented. You just want to have some kind of insurance behind Drake, especially when you are relying on that playmaking ability.
All right, we'll parlay that into this to close out the mailbag then. Who is the Patriots' backup quarterback next year?
I think I do wonder if Jacoby Brissett would come back if he didn't get offers from other teams. Now, depth at quarterback is so important. I think the Patriots would tell him next year you would not be our main backup. They probably would try to transition towards a Joe Milton type. But yeah, I think it really just depends on what kind of offers Jacoby Brissett has, where it's like, how many teams is he really going to play for? Like, he could be another bridge guy if he wants, but does he really want to do that again?
Right.
If the Patriots pay him well as a backup, like they have all this money. If they just want to be like, Jacoby, we will pay you. And I also don't know how much the Patriots are even going to value him, to be honest, because obviously you're hoping next year they have more talent where he maybe can get back to the kind of Jacoby Brissett we saw before he got to the Patriots, but didn't play very well for you. The whole reason you brought him in was to be a mentor. You don't need a mentor next season. So I do question how much they value him, whether he would want to come back or go somewhere where he has a better chance to start. So I'm going to go with Joe Milton. I feel like that's the safest choice.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, you know what? I do think Milton's probably the safest choice, but just to pump up Brissett's tires a little bit here. Yeah, the question says that he couldn't win games, but first of all, he did win 2 games for them. He won 2 out of their 3 games, as the Jets game was, he didn't start, but he came in and won it. And then he won that first game in Cincinnati. Secondly, I think he's a great leader. He's still a captain. People have talked, highly of him in the room. I don't think Drake Maye necessarily needs him anymore. I think that the transition was what the idea of the transition where you have him to lean on, a pros pro type of guy. I think that's kind of over. But Drake Maye's never done a year 2. He's never hit a year 2 lull, right? And Jacoby Brissett may have. So someone like that can kind of guide him through that. Now Alex Van Pelt, TC McCartney can as well, and they've done a great job with that development here. So you're right as far as the money. I think it would be a solid investment to have a guy like him to be a backup, A, to help out the room, and B, to have someone who can win game, go in there, know the system, etc. I just don't know how realistic it is. You mentioned going elsewhere to be a bridge guy. He could probably make more than he would in New England, and he could play football. I look at Jameis Winston, who was, I want to say they're around the same age because they were drafted around the same year, 2014, 15. Winston was bridge / backup material for the last 3 or 4 years in New Orleans and then into Cleveland. And then Deshaun Watson goes down. Winston goes in, starts playing pretty well in Cleveland, and he's going to get paid a decent amount of money, I would think, next year to be a backup elsewhere or even another bridge starter once again. Or he could be Cleveland's starter next year. So if Brissett has those types of aspirations and wants to go and try and do that somewhere else, I think he should. I think he deserves it. So we'll see what happens there, but I think he would be a good fit should they be able to mend the fence there. All right, that's going to do it for our Week 15. We didn't even answer any Cardinals questions. I know we have a couple more, but I got to hear. I want to see if we didn't really even have any Cardinals-centric questions. So we'll be back tomorrow with our Cardinals preview on Patriots Daily. So make sure to tune in for that. Thank you for tuning in. We will be down in Foxboro tomorrow as well. 2 more practices for the Patriots before they head to Arizona for their Week 15 matchup to keep this thing rolling. 4 more games left. Taylor, thank you for joining me. And I think that's it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.